Good afternoon. I'm Andrew Lapham, Chief Innovation Officer at Searchlight Consulting. I'm delighted to welcome you to this Accelerated Digital Transformation in Retail webinar. I'll be facilitating today's discussion, and let me start by thanking Mark Demody, CIO of Costa Coffee, for hosting this webinar. We're going to be talking about how to integrate the customer journey at pace, ensuring customers can interact with organisations on any device at any time, anywhere, the rebirth of the Martini slogan for our digital age. I'd like to introduce our panel, Mark, Jay and myself. Between the three of us, we have over 60 years of retail and digital experience and cover transformational leadership, digital product innovation and technology leadership. Our most recent focus is on connecting multiple delivery channels for retailers. However, we have a background in loyalty management, e-commerce, digital mobile product and prototyping, CRM, digital innovation and ROI, and managing and obtaining value from big data to make decisions. Jay and I are part of Searchlight, which is a business transformation consultancy. Searchlight have been set up to shape a strategy and then deliver digital transformation at pace. This is done using technology across multiple channels. In essence, we help our clients make informed decisions, manage risks, and achieve measurable success. We're going to spend now about 30 to 40 minutes providing a view of accelerating digital transformation and how best to integrate the customer journey. We will touch on the digital opportunity of placing the customer at the heart of the business. We'll look at the upside that can be achieved and conversely the implications if you don't get it right. We'll outline the constraints of most organisations need to deal with, which are often seen as blockers to change the way you interact with a customer. Then we'll pick up on how to get started and talk about the key building blocks and selecting the right approach. We will discuss the challenges and close with a few learnings that we've picked up from how we have transformed our clients' businesses in months and not years. We'll take questions towards the end of the webinar. So I'd like to welcome Mark Demody, CIO of Costa Coffee, who's worked across the retail space, delivering business transformation with Costa, Wiggle, Sainsbury's and Debenhams over the last 20 years.
Thank you, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be here today and contribute to this webinar. I'll introduce myself. My name's Mark Demody, and I've held a number of technology roles for over 20 years and have been lucky enough to have always been working on the latest business-to-consumer technology, starting with physical retail, then pure-play e-commerce, then multi-channel, and most recently, omni-channel and digital. Out of all of these trends, digital is the most exciting. It will quite simply change the world, with technology and the customer firmly at the centre of that change. We think that digital has already had a huge impact. However, we are only at the very beginning. Digital is to be seen as both an opportunity and a threat. An opportunity if businesses invest in capability to ensure that they are continually innovating and competing, and a threat if they don't invest and the competition does. Traditional businesses are being disrupted by younger, smarter and more agile businesses. Just look at Clinton Cards, Kodak and the London Black Cabs, to name a few. The common theme between all three is that they didn't understand what the customer wanted and therefore did not invest accordingly and evolve. Digital cards, for instance, from Moonpig and others have been disrupted by digital cards. Kodak didn't respond quickly enough to digital cameras, and then smartphones being the main method of taking pictures. In a similar vein, Uber have disrupted the London black cab market. Uber looked at the cab industry with a fresh pair of eyes and massively improved the customer experience with the application of digital and an enhanced customer journey. They concluded that trying to hail a taxi in the cold and rain at the side of the street, competing with other customers for that taxi, and then fumbling around for cash at the end of the journey to pay the driver is not very convenient. Far better to let the customer order via an app, know exactly when and where to meet the car, and then automatically and electronically take payment from the customer at the end of the journey. All seamless, all frictionless. And then there are future initiatives that are just around the corner. For instance, driverless cars, people-free contact centres, and a virtual doctor. There are kids today who are not expecting to have to learn to drive or take a test because their car will be driverless. In Asia today, there are contact centres where the customer believes they are talking to a real person, but in fact they are talking to a robot. Ask yourself the next time you talk to a customer contact centre, are you actually talking to a real person? A virtual doctor, you'll be able to use virtual reality to talk to your doctor at a time and a place that suits you. much more convenient. The key with digital is that the customer is king. The customer is in the driving seat. If the customer doesn't like what you have to offer, they don't use it and they use someone else. They use someone else, they use the competition, because this is easier than ever before. It could be the 2 seconds it takes to delete your app, or the 2 seconds it takes to open a new browser to the competition and not your website. Competition and disruption have never been greater. This has a number of implications for business today to ensure success, and here are a few of them. You need to understand your customers better than ever and have strong customer insight at your fingertips. You need to have strong business alignment across your organization. The technology function alone cannot drive digital. It needs to be embedded in your business and sponsored by the board. You need to invest in enabling capability and technology. Capability like product managers, user experience, and expert technical delivery. Now is the time to replace your legacy applications that are not digitally compatible. Stop deprioritizing legacy replacement projects. The type of technology that you adopt will also change. Much better to use cloud technology as a service rather than the more traditional methods of installing and configuring on-premise packaged solutions. This is too slow. You will need to increase your rate of change by adopting modern development practices like Agile and Lean. This also means that the nature of the IT function is changing too. For instance, more than ever before, the IT function needs to work in partnership with other business functions. The IT function needs to understand the customer. This is not just the role of the marketing function. The IT function needs to take seriously the demand to go quicker. The IT function needs to ensure that they understand clearly the latest trends in technology. And you also need to be prepared to hand over some accountability to other business functions and be comfortable with this. For instance, product management. If you get this right, the rewards are huge. I will now hand over to Andrew and Jay, who will go into more detail on these topics, and I will be delighted to take questions at the end of this webinar.
Thank you, Mark. So we've seen the business opportunity and indeed can get an idea of the challenges. What do we need to do first? The first thing we believe is to create a disruptive digital vision. You have to get the hearts and minds of the business. You have to get the ambition and the thinking all around the same objective. We find taking a step into the future and imagining how your business will work in the future to engage tech-savvy customers in a multi-channel experience works well. It's a shift into the future, understand what it looks like, and then look back. The digital vision may be disruptive and challenge existing business thinking, and so it will need to be clear and visual so that stakeholders can understand it and be able to challenge from different perspectives. Ultimately, it needs to be a shared vision that the leadership team will own and engage their teams with. Once agreed, it must be broken down into a roadmap showing the new capabilities that will be delivered, focusing on infrastructure, business process, and innovative products. These new capabilities are a basis for understanding the gap in capabilities that need to be achieved to address the vision. Let's have a look at the steps we use of creating a digital vision. Firstly, business of the future. The first thing is step forward in time. We need to look at how the business will operate. How will it function with new capabilities, and how will they compete in a world that is more technology advanced than today? Imagine a world with 4G, 5G, even 10G, and then look back. Secondly, customer-centric. We need to consider how the organization change will look when it is focused on the customer. It is likely that more attention will be taken on the actual experience of the customer. Omni-channel. Also, will the organization be operating a single channel or multiple? Will the customer be right at the heart, and the customer will feel that the organization is consistent and remembers the last conversation they had? In the future, the channel will all be connected. Technology will enable us to do this, so we need to understand where we want to be, how the technology will help us, and how the information will flow. And finally, insight and data driven. In the future, customer interactions will be based on actual insight that we gain. Okay, so we've got a digital vision. What would we do next? The next thing we need to do is we need to understand the customer journey. On this slide I've got in front of me here, you can see the different channels. We've got social media, online, in-person, the contact center, email, and on mobile. What can happen in a customer journey is a customer will move between these channels. Sometimes they'll do it when you don't expect it. Someone will have a conversation in store, and they may actually, as soon as they leave the store, they may actually check on the mobile. What they may do is they then make a phone call, and then they may follow up with a return visit. It would be great if you knew that. What you would be able to do is you'd be able to understand the sort of questions, the sort of experience that they've already had. So what we need to do is we need to understand that sort of interaction. We map the customer journey. We identify the channels and we identify the flow. What we then do is assess the emotion. What sort of emotional state is the customer in? Have they had a good experience and a bad experience at each point? What is a moment of truth? If someone has a bad experience, maybe they'll leave the process completely. And what you'll do is you'll lose that customer potentially forever. What we then do is, by assessing these emotions, what we then do is look for opportunities. Where are the opportunities that we can actually bring the customer emotion level up? Where could we move it from a poor experience to a good experience? And then once we do that, what we then do is we then test and learn. We understand the customer journey that we want, and we identify what we need to do to create that journey. So if I move you to the next step, what's all important? Now we've got a digital vision, now we understand the customer journey, we need to move to making it happen. How do we do this in an accelerated way? The way to do it that we find works really well is to use prototyping and the concept of minimum viable product. This in the digital world is doing the very minimum you need to do to have a product that will work in the marketplace and that actually will achieve your basic business proposition. It's not enhancements, it's the basics. So you need to design with that in mind right from the beginning. You have to be hard. You have to actually really understand that the basics of the solution is going to be a basic journey that someone will be able to get all the way through all the steps. So the secret is to ensure we focus on the most important features, and then you prioritize what is necessary. If the functionality of favorites, for example, is desirable but not needed to make an order, then we would leave it out for later. So how do you accelerate prototyping? Well, you sketch, you draw, you understand it in a very basic way. You draw out what the steps are and how it will look. What you then do is you then test this. So you can turn a drawing into a digital prototype very quickly. You then test it in the market, get reaction from focus groups, and you then actually learn what works. If someone, when they tap on a screen, actually say, I don't understand that, you may have saved yourself weeks of development. And so what you need to do is change while it's still in design. And finally, when you've got that, what you need to do is then understand the full multiple channels. The challenge with multiple channels is that someone will have advanced their understanding of your product through another channel. So you need to be able to skip between channels and be able to pick up that conversation. So once we've done that, if I then move you to the method, what approach do you do to actually accelerate digital transformation? What we recommend is a combination. You need Agile for digital products, but you need Waterfall for the solid platform. This has its challenges, but what you need to do is Agile is used for innovation, market testing of the digital product, and for actually understanding what is working and what isn't. Waterfall is used for structure, making sure that there's a step-by-step considered process that is robust and that actually will enable you to build a platform that you can rely on. The point of Agile is that it will change. The point of Waterfall is that it will be sustainable, and so it's very different. If you take the example of a back office integration, you wouldn't use Agile. You need it to be very clear dependencies. You need to make sure that it's processed, that the process we use is robust, and that actually when it goes live, it's in a very, very sustainable state. So these two different approaches working at the same time provides great challenges. What you need to do is you need to make sure the dependencies are clear and there's strong collaboration between all groups. Ultimately, you need a single team mentality to make this happen. Now I'd like to hand over to Jay, our CTO.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, everyone. So Mark earlier talked about the customer being king. And essentially what we have is on this slide, what I'm trying to demonstrate is you have a wide range of channels that customers will use to interact with your business on. They will also transact, they'll also research, and they're expecting a consistent journey. So when they are at a POS in a bricks and mortar operation, they're expecting to transact, collect their orders that are placed through a different channel, and they do a lot of payments at that channel, and as well as product information is provided there. You may have a kiosk in a bricks and mortar operation or in a partner store. You'll certainly have e-commerce, you'll have mobile, and you'll have a loyalty scheme and a whole bunch of services around that. The other thing that there's the different dynamic that's happening a lot more now is that the customers will interact using a variety of social channels, and there are way too many social channels to actually name them all right now. But in the example here, the lady could be tweeting, she could be taking a photo of herself and sending it to her friends via Facebook. She might be putting it on Snapchat, and Snapchat is now a valid commerce channel. So that's what the consumer is expecting, and they expect that right now. The reality is that when you're tasked with delivering that kind of connectivity and that kind of customer expectation, what you normally find, and what we find quite a lot when we talk to our clients, is that the links between the channels are broken. So a customer is not necessarily recognized in the commerce operation easily to their in-store habit, as an example. The behavioral analysis of the propensity of that customer to do something else or something new or cross-sell or an upsell, it's not fully understood across the channels. How do you get your return on investment on a Facebook campaign? Do you have a single view of the customer for either operational or analytical views? How does your loyalty scheme stack up against all of those multi-channels? And then what insights are you getting? Andrew talked about insights being key to developing your product. What are the insights that you're getting, and are they actionable? And then which social channel will you actually adopt as your main channel? Can you afford just one channel? You probably need to have half a dozen channels at the very least, and they're all time consuming and expensive to integrate to. So integration is the key challenge here. So again, every client that we speak to has grown from an organic level of growth, adding layers upon layers upon layers, to having to be much faster and scalable in their integration, because new channels or new methods or new customer expectations are popping up faster than they can actually integrate that into the wider machine. So the key questions here are how do you start to untangle your services without actually killing business processes? It's going to be one of your biggest risks, and at the same time you have to inject future-proofing and innovation into that whole mix as you're doing the transformation. I've talked about single view for analytics and operational. It's really important to be clear that data is quite essential, and you have to be cost effective because you don't have an unlimited amount of cash to do this. Talk about data. So there's a whole plethora of data out there in the world. There's real time, there's operational, there's offline data, there's analytical, there's structured and unstructured. And what I mean by that is structured data are your transactions, your operational data. When a customer calls a contact center or a customer transacts in a channel, that information winds its way back to a payment, and it's all structured and it's in a database. The unstructured data is actually the voice conversations that they're having with you, either directly with you or in store or in a contact center, or it could be emails or tweets, or it could be other social interactions that they're having about you, talking about you, to you, or about you and about your brand. There is an explosion in that data, and our steering counsel would be, don't get hung up on storage. We have a lot of clients that are hung up in a conversation. How much storage do I need? How big a system does it need to be? How much space have I got in the data center? And we're big advocates of using the cloud across a range of industries, not just retail, but across manufacturing, across financial services. The cloud is here and now, and you should focus on principally using the cloud as your platform. But one of the big areas as well with this data explosion is understanding who owns it. So who owns customer in your own organization? And what we find is the customer, as an example, is owned by a series of different people during the life cycle of that customer journey. It could be finance, it could be marketing, it could be operations, it could be sales. And with the data explosion comes a general view around compliance. If you live and work in an industry that is highly regulated, like say banking or defense, you have got some key processes you have to follow for compliance. But what's coming soon is the general data protection regulation, which will hold people to more account on data, even in industries that are not as heavily regulated. And you need to be clear about that. And we do a lot of work with our clients right now talking about GDPR and the impact that that's going to have in their world. And then, are you using the right data for decision support? What I mean by that is you probably have many versions of the truth, and you have a lot of spreadsheets that massage the truth for the question at hand. And it's important to understand and know what and where the data is coming from, and how it's transformed, how it's derived and transformed, and how you're going to use it, especially with GDPR, where you'll be asked to account for it. So it's a huge challenge, right? And I often feel like the little guy on the left tackling the sumo, and it almost feels like an impossible challenge. And then you think to yourself, well, I took the challenge on and I'm now using the wrong tool. So you use a hammer to put in a bolt, and you try to use a spanner to put a nail in. The important thing here is not to dive in. You need to plan and design. You have to be led by your actual design. And so you start with a hypothesis on a design. Sorry, I've just lost control of the slide slightly. You start with a hypothesis on the slides. Back on the slide now. So your hypothesis on your design, you do an outline design, and then you do some detail around it. And you want to avoid fact-free conversations. It's always nice to think about the future and build a whole raft of potential functions within your application. But we go back to Andrew's point about minimum viable product. And you need to build a core system to be able to build upon in layers, and you don't necessarily need to build everything all at once. And you can't afford to know everything. And as much as a technologist, as much as I like to think that I know everything, I don't. And just like that, I go for expert advice in areas that are my blind side. And it's important to get expert advice to help you accelerate your progress and your transformation. And then finally, break it down into some key building blocks. Simplicity is still the best. So how do we defeat the sumo? With a series of key artifacts. So I always advocate building a data model. Understanding your current world through your data is very important. And the two artifacts that we always create in our assignments are a conceptual data model and a logical data model. The conceptual model helps you build a picture of your world currently and how you're moving data and information around. Your logical model gives you insights into the decisions you need to make for the future. And they're both very useful entities, and they work hand in hand, because eventually you're going to map your data to your interfaces, your information flows, and your business processes. And these are key artifacts, and you don't need necessarily an enterprise architecture tool. A lot of companies have tried and invested heavily in enterprise architecture tools, and they get adopted a little bit, they get adopted a lot, they provide lots of useful information, but what we find is actually we can do these things very quickly and simply, and then adopt a tool for the process as and when you need it. Mapping the business processes, the current and the target state, is again essential. It's part of the architecture. So you're kind of going from your conceptual to your logical, to your interfaces, to your processes, and eventually the devil of the detail is in all the APIs that you're going to create, application programming interfaces. These are atomic level pieces of code that enable you to move data from one point to another. So for example, a sales order being placed on a mobile channel will flow through what we call APIs, through to a series of platforms to eventually land into your supply chain, eventually land into payment to you, and eventually back to your general ledger for reconciliation. So defeating the Sumo is very important, but you do it through intellect, through the use of data modeling and interface design and processes. So again, we talked about minimum viable product, and again, the way to manage minimum viable products is to avoid introducing risks unnecessarily. Shortcuts are good if you make an informed decision to take a shortcut in a product. It may be that for compliance or for legal reasons, or the fact that you want to be first to market. So there are compelling reasons why you would actually, get a quick product out there. But if it's uncontrolled, and if you create a minimum viable product, and the analogy I use, a payday loan is an uncontrolled debt. You're creating a technical debt, and if it's a payday loan and you keep it for a long time, you're going to pay a lot of money back to mitigate yourself or to remediate that issue. What you really want is a mortgage, and you want to be able to analyze precisely how much you're going to have to pay to recover from the shortcut. And again, the usual thing is you manage it like any other risk. You assign an owner to it, you time box it, and you review it on a frequent basis to make sure that your technical debt is managed in the appropriate way. So in terms of how to communicate, so at the technical level, you'll have a lot of data and you'll have a lot of information that you'd love to be able to go out and communicate with your stakeholders. But most people won't, most buyers and sponsors won't have the head for that detail. What I tend to do is I tend to be a strong advocate for using infographics. And in this example, I've just demonstrated simply a roadmap for a fictitious system, and demonstrated through a series of transition states how you're implementing the final outcome. And those transition states also include the technical deliveries that you're going to be able to, or you're going to have to implement in order to deliver the successful business outcome. So essentially, I'm going to pass over back to Andrew to talk about our learnings and insights.
Yeah. Okay. So if we distill down, what have we got? We've got 5 points here. The first thing is disruption. Don't be afraid to challenge everything. If you don't start with a disruptive vision, then you risk your vision being out of date. You need to think beyond your current practices and your current business. You need to stretch your thinking so that you build your vision out with, the vision you build out will be competitive. Challenging the status quo, challenging the way business is done and the way it's done in a digital way is imperative. Secondly, agility. The way we learn and respond to change in the market. It's not just moving from one place to another, it's understanding more about the market and therefore refining your direction. It's what you learn that's important, and so you have to be agile to what you learn. This may uncover that you require a different type of capability or a different type of engagement with a customer. And thirdly, collaboration. Align as a single team. It brings together the various different teams into one team. Teams often have competing priorities and objectives which can cause conflict. It's key that teams are aligned and understand what they need from each other. A collaborative team. You need a single team going the same direction and knowing how to work together.
And one of the main things also within any kind of digital transformation is to ensure that you lead by design. Be design-led. And what I mean by that is, if you plan the design in the way that I've outlined earlier, you will have a strong, successful outcome, more chance of getting a strong, successful outcome. And a lot of organizations that we talk to are outsourced, and over the years have ended up outsourcing their intellectual property. And our advice is, don't do that. Keep your intellectual property, because as you build your collaborative team and alignment, it's important that you bring that knowledge from within your organization to bear in your transformation. Alignment is really key for me, because a source of a lot of valuable information of how your current pain points exist today, how you're mitigating them. A lot of that information probably already exists within your technical teams, and getting them engaged and in alignment is very key.
Okay, so we'd like to thank you for attending this webinar and hope the themes have resonated and you found it thought-provoking and informative. As we close, we'd like to leave you with a quote from Calvin Coolidge. Nothing in this world takes the place of persistence. It's not talent, genius or education. The critical components are persistence and determination, and that's what we truly believe. So finally, any questions? If you'd like to join the conversation, we will be at the RBTE event on the 8th and 9th of May, and hope to see you there. And most importantly, if you've got any questions now, if you'd like to send those through to Steve Sharp via the chat function, that would be great. So thank you very much.
So we're getting some questions coming through, so just bear with us while we just pick those up.
Okay, what is the biggest challenge of using both Agile and Waterfall? So Jay, do you want to go first? What your thoughts are?
Sure, yeah. So one of the challenges that I come across quite a lot is organizations say that we are now following the Agile manifesto, and they get cracking with building either a website or a e-commerce operation or a mobile app, and somewhere along the line you have to build some infrastructure. You need some services, whether it's a middleware stack or whether it's a database. And when you start building infrastructure, you can't actually start using it before it's built, because it's not agile enough to do that. You have to physically build something. You have to sign contracts with providers. So I think the big challenge is recognizing that the truly only agile way of operating might not actually be the right one for you, and that you will have a mixture of agile and waterfall. And the important factor there is actually to understand and recognize that at the outset, and then think about how you will blend the two together. And there are, it's beyond the scope of this the webinar to actually talk in detail about that, but we'd love to talk to you about how we at Searchlight Consulting actually help clients blend those two methods of delivery for really great successful outcomes.
Yeah, and it is a bit of respect for both approaches, isn't it?
Absolutely.
In many ways, it's it's understanding what's fit for purpose. So not only have you got an agile team who perhaps turning around things, what they need to understand is the implications of those changes on others, right? So it's that conversation.
100%, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Very good. Okay, have we got another question coming through?
I can see people typing.
Yeah, so there's a question here saying, what solution or component have you used to connect the different channels? This is incredibly important, just building on some of the points that Jay made. If you're adopting best-of-breed solutions, or you're trying to bring together apps and websites, having a fantastic middleware is really key. And we won't go into detail into the solutions on this call, but there are a lot of good solutions out there. So it's the middleware layer, and also understanding the data. So single view of the customer is also incredibly important when you're bringing channels together. You don't want lots of different pots of data. You want it all in one place where you can understand from start to finish exactly what the customer has done, leverage that data, and use it ultimately to sell more products to that customer.
Thanks, Mark. That's quite interesting, because the next question that we've just had is how do you address identifying orders from different channels? So in my diagram of the ladies shopping, all of those channels, the world now exists in a space of being able to take orders from a variety of channels, and some of those channels are mass market channels, like a mobile app, which is always available, always on. Somebody could place an order at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's the collection and funneling of those orders back down to your supply chain and into your finance system is really key. And customers will normally expect the Amazon experience. I'm quite happy to place an order at 2 o'clock in the morning, and by 1 minute past 2, I want to know when it's arriving. So that kind of connectivity kind of goes back to the point that Mark was making around a good integration layer, a good solid middleware integration layer that is secure, that is scalable, that is strategic for you, for your business, that is reduced risk and is cost effective. That's almost like a 5-point mantra that I apply to any kind of middleware design that enables you to join different channels of different types of capacity, different types of characteristics into a consistent user experience.
Great, thanks, Jay. We've got another one through. What's your experience of working with stakeholders that expect a sign-off design as the approach that we've outlined with Agile suggests the end product is not designed at once? So yeah, very good question. What you've got a backlog, you've got a priority of functionality. And so what you're doing is you do have an agreement with the stakeholders of what the scope is. But what you do is you say you're not sure which bits are the top priority, and you're going to test and learn. And so ultimately there's this, what we call the minimum viable product is the minimum that has to be done. The journey, the customer journey has to be complete. But within that there are some nuances. And what we want to do is test what is best for the customer. If the customer, and through the insight, we find that actually it's better to introduce something which is a feedback loop that actually engages them, then actually we would bring that in. So ultimately, to answer the question, it's not a finite scope, but it's a broad scope, and within that you've got a prioritization exercise. And what you do is you keep stakeholders involved. You have demos that go back. You actually share the insights as they arrive, and you involve the stakeholders in the process. And it's very, it's very rewarding when actually they're asking for that insight rather than sort of just trying to get a sign off.
So on that point also, Andrew, I would also add that one of the things that we do when we do designs is the stakeholders will always expect a 100% nailed up, clear design. And in the world of last year, year before, in the old days, you would spend literally weeks and months producing a design. And the characteristics of that design would be a lot of linear systems being plugged in together with a lot of cost associated with them. Nowadays, we have to do something quick, fast, and effective for the mass market. And then the way that we build designs now is, with a lot of our clients, is basically we start with a series of hypotheses, and we iterate through those to produce valid potential designs before we actually home in on a specific design and then do the more detail around it. And we work in a very iterative capacity to keep pace with the Agile teams, but also the back-end infrastructures that are more legacy, that require more traditional forms of thought. Right, we've also had a question about APIs and how we go about designing and delivering API solutions. That's a big question, and it probably involves having a half-a-day workshop with you to figure out what your needs and wants are. What I would say, though, is for an API, application programming interface, think of it as an atomic level of integration between two types of different systems. It really depends on the problem at hand, but if I make a problem up, I'll give you a flavor of it. So you need a mobile app to be able to get a list of stores in your area, in the area that the customer says. So it could be they want, in the center of Nottingham, they want to know how many stores you've got, or how many outlets you've got. That would be typically an API that we would design and create. We'd map the model of the data that is available. We'd identify the sources of the data, and more often than not, many organizations have their stores or their location data is in a spreadsheet somewhere. So we'd have to programmatically produce a database out of that. And I don't want to get too technical on this, but we would then expose that content to a mobile app so that it can actually do a search for a particular location and return whatever location that they're looking for, an indication of where the stores and the outlets for that particular organization are. But as I say, it's a big, deep subject, and it does need quite a lot of discussion before you actually cut a line of code. We will be at the retail RBTE, and I'll be there as well, along with Andrew, and happy to talk to you in more detail about that, and maybe get a whiteboard and draw something up to give you a flavour of how things will work.
Lovely. Well, that's been hopefully very informative for everyone. We'd just like to again thank you all for joining the webinar, and we're going to close it now. So look forward to seeing you at the RBT event if you attend.